In 1928, during excavations beneath the Ottoman archives in Istanbul, a team of engineers discovered a sealed stone shaft descending 200 feet into bedrock, lined with copper plating and surrounded by crystalline mineral deposits. No record explained its purpose. No Ottoman document claimed its construction. Similar structures have since been found in China, Peru, Egypt, and Central Europe. Vertical shafts extending deep into the earth, engineered with precision, sealed deliberately, and consistently located near sites of ancient power. They were not wells for water. The mineral staining, metallic components, and electromagnetic anomalies detected around them suggest another function entirely. Some researchers call them energy extraction points, designed to tap forces beneath the surface. But if these systems served advanced civilizations across continents, why were they sealed? What event forced their abandonment? And what do modern detection technologies now reveal about what still lies dormant beneath our feet? I began this investigation by examining what archaeologists officially say about these structures. The academic consensus is clear and consistent. Deep vertical shafts found at ancient sites are attributed to religious practices, burial customs, or water management systems. In Egypt, shafts beneath the Giza Plateau are described as offering chambers, or symbolic passageways to the underworld. In Mesopotamia, similar structures are labeled as votive wells, where priests deposited ritual objects to honor subterranean deities. In Peru, vertical shafts at sites like Chavin de Huantar are classified as geothermal ventilation systems, or ceremonial access points to mountain spirits. The official timeline is straightforward. These shafts were constructed by known civilizations: Sumerian priests around 3000 BCE, Egyptian workers during the Old Kingdom, Incan engineers in the pre-Columbian period. The tools were primitive: copper chisels, stone hammers, wooden wedges. The motivation was spiritual. Ancient peoples, we are told, dug deep into the earth to connect with gods, ancestors, or cosmological forces they did not understand scientifically. The shafts served symbolic purposes. They were not infrastructure. They were not functional technology. They were expressions of belief. I examined university textbooks, peer-reviewed journals, and museum placards. The language is always the same: ceremonial, ritual, sacred. When I asked archaeologists why these shafts were lined with copper or bronze, the answer was aesthetic. When I asked why they descend so far into solid rock, the answer was devotion. When I asked why similar designs appear on multiple continents, the answer was independent invention driven by universal human spirituality. No academic paper I found suggested these structures served a technical function. The possibility is not even considered. But I noticed something else in the official record. The descriptions avoid certain details. They rarely mention the depth with precision. They do not discuss the mineral deposits found on shaft walls. They do not explain why electromagnetic instruments malfunction near these sites. And they never address the engineering problem. How did ancient peoples, using only primitive tools, carve perfectly vertical shafts over 200 feet deep through granite and limestone without modern drilling equipment? The official story provides answers that sound reasonable until you examine what it leaves out. I decided to visit these sites myself. I wanted to see what the textbooks did not describe. I wanted to measure what the academic papers did not mention. And I wanted to ask the question that no mainstream archaeologist seemed willing to entertain. What if these were not sacred wells at all? What if they were something else entirely? Something functional, something engineered, something designed to interact with forces beneath the surface that we no longer understand? The anomalies, engineering that defies explanation. The first anomaly I encountered was in Egypt. Beneath the Osirion at Abydos, I gained access to a vertical shaft that official guides rarely mention. It descends 180 feet into bedrock. The walls are smooth, not roughly hewn, but polished to a near reflective surface. I ran my hand along the stone. There were no tool marks, no chisel scars, no evidence of the percussion techniques that ancient Egyptians supposedly used. The shaft was carved as if the stone had been softened, shaped, and then hardened again. But the walls themselves were not the most striking feature. Covering the interior surface was a green oxidized layer, copper corrosion. I took samples and had them analyzed. The results confirmed it. A thin copper or bronze lining had once covered the entire shaft. Most of it had been removed at some point in history, but traces remained embedded in the stone. Why would a ceremonial well require metallic lining? Copper does not serve a symbolic function, it serves a conductive one. I traveled to China, to the Longyu Caves in Zhejiang province. These are not natural formations, they are artificial chambers carved into sandstone, featuring vertical shafts that plunge over 100 feet below the main cavern floors. Chinese archaeologists date them to before 200 BCE, though some researchers argue they are far older. I descended into one of the shafts with a magnetometer. The readings spiked immediately. The electromagnetic field strength was 3 times higher than surface levels and fluctuated rhythmically, not randomly, but in patterns that suggested resonance or harmonic frequency. In Peru, at Chavín de Huántar, I examined the so-called ventilation shafts that run beneath the temple complex. The official explanation claims they were designed to channel water or air, but the shafts are too narrow for efficient airflow, and they do not connect to water sources. What they do connect to are underground galleries lined with quartz-rich stone. When I examined the shaft walls under magnification, I found the same green oxidation, evidence of metallic lining long since removed. I also found something else: crystalline mineral deposits, particularly quartz and feldspar, concentrated along the lower sections of the shafts where they penetrate deepest into bedrock. The pattern repeated in every location I investigated. Whether in Turkey, China, Peru, or Egypt, these shafts shared characteristics that defied the official narrative. They were too deep to have been dug by hand. They were too precise to have been carved with primitive tools. They contained metallic elements that served no decorative purpose, and they exhibited electromagnetic anomalies that could not be explained by natural geology alone. I could not ignore what the evidence suggested. These were not ritual wells. They were engineered systems, and they were designed to interact with something beneath the surface. The pattern, a global network of subsurface access points. I returned home and began mapping. I compiled data from archaeological reports, geological surveys, and my own field notes. I marked every location where a deep vertical shaft had been documented. The map that emerged was striking. These structures were not randomly distributed. They clustered along tectonic plate boundaries, the Ring of Fire, the Mediterranean seismic zone, the Himalayan fault lines. They appeared near underground aquifers and regions with high concentrations of piezoelectric minerals like quartz, tourmaline, and topaz. But the most significant pattern involved their relationship to surface structures. In Egypt, vertical shafts are found beneath or adjacent to pyramids and temple complexes. In Mesopotamia, they appear near ziggurats. In Central America, they cluster around step pyramids. In China, they are located beneath ancient palace foundations and along ley lines identified in traditional geomancy. These were not isolated wells, they were integrated into larger architectural systems. The shafts went down, the monuments went up. The placement was deliberate. I began reading ancient texts with new attention. In the Vedic traditions of India, there are references to Naga energy, serpent power that flows beneath mountains and can be accessed through specific ritual sites. The Rig Veda describes veins of the earth that carry hidden fire. In Sumerian texts, the god Enki is associated with the Abzu, the subterranean freshwater ocean, but also described as a source of power and knowledge accessed through sacred wells. Egyptian funerary texts mention the Duat, the underworld, but also describe it as a place where energies converge and where certain gods draw strength. I noticed the recurring imagery: serpents, dragons, subterranean veins, hidden fire. These were not just metaphors for death or the afterlife, they were descriptions of something beneath the surface, something the ancients believed could be accessed, harnessed, and channeled upward through specific points in the earth. The shafts were not symbolic gateways, they were literal access points. I compared my map with modern geophysical data. The locations where ancient shafts were built correspond almost exactly with regions where telluric currents, natural electrical flows in the Earth's crust, are strongest. They align with zones where tectonic stress generates piezoelectric charge in crystalline rock. They sit above regions where geothermal gradients create temperature differentials that, under the right conditions, can generate electrical potential. The ancients were not digging randomly. They knew where to dig. They understood something about the Earth's electrical nature that we have only recently begun to rediscover. This raises a question that orthodox archaeology refuses to ask. What if these civilizations possessed knowledge of Earth energies that we have lost? What if the shafts were not symbols, but tools designed to tap into the planet's own electromagnetic field and convert it into usable energy? And if that is true, then the next question becomes unavoidable. How did they do it? The system: extracting energy from the Earth's interior. How does a copper-lined shaft in piezoelectric rock generate electrical charge? The question sounds absurd within the framework of conventional archaeology. But when I examined the principles of geophysics and electrical engineering, I found something compelling. The Earth itself is a massive electrical system. Telluric currents, flows of electric charge through the ground, have been measured and mapped since the 19th century. These currents are generated by solar radiation interacting with the ionosphere, by the motion of conductive seawater through the planet's magnetic field, and by tectonic activity creating charge separation in rock layers. Piezoelectric minerals, particularly quartz, generate electrical charge when subjected to mechanical stress. The Earth's crust is under constant stress from tectonic forces. Regions near fault lines experience continuous pressure fluctuations. When quartz-bearing rock is compressed, electrons are displaced, creating a measurable voltage. This is not theoretical. It is the principle behind quartz watches and modern sensors. The charge is weak in isolation, but when concentrated over large volumes of stressed rock, it accumulates. I began to understand the design. The shafts were positioned in locations where three factors converged: high tectonic stress, high concentrations of piezoelectric minerals, and proximity to underground water flow. Water is conductive. When it flows through fractured rock under pressure, it enhances electrical conductivity and facilitates charge movement. The shafts penetrated deep into these zones, down to where pressure, minerals, and water intersected. The copper lining served as a conductor, channeling the accumulated charge upward. But the shafts alone were not the complete system. I studied the surface structures built above them. The pyramids, ziggurats, and temple complexes were not arbitrary monuments. They were architecturally tuned. Many featured internal chambers lined with granite, a rock rich in quartz. Many had peaked or stepped designs that would act as electrical concentrators. Some, like the Great Pyramid, contained narrow shafts running from deep chambers to exterior openings, pathways that could facilitate charge dissipation or transmission. I examined Tesla's work on Earth resonance and wireless energy transmission. Between 1899 and 1905, Tesla conducted experiments showing that the Earth itself could be used as a conductor for electrical energy. He believed that by tapping into the planet's natural electrical potential and using structures tuned to specific frequencies, energy could be extracted and transmitted without wires. His Wardenclyffe Tower project was an attempt to demonstrate this principle on a large scale. It was never completed, and his research was suppressed after his death. But the principle Tesla explored was not new. I found descriptions in ancient engineering manuals, Indian texts on Vimana construction, Sumerian temple foundation rituals that specified precise alignments with subterranean fire veins, Egyptian instructions for pyramid construction that mentioned maintaining balance with the powers below. These were not religious instructions, they were technical specifications. The ancients were doing what Tesla attempted, tapping the Earth's electrical field using architecture designed to resonate with natural frequencies. The evidence suggests a system that was decentralized, geologically integrated, and required no fuel. Shafts accessed charge generated by natural tectonic processes. Copper conducted it upward. Surface structures collected, stored, or radiated it. The system was passive. It did not consume resources. It simply interfaced with energies already present in the Earth. If such a system existed at the scale these structures imply, it would have provided continuous, localized power to ancient civilizations without combustion, without waste, without depletion. That possibility leads to the next question. If it worked, why was it abandoned? The sealing. Why the wells were closed after catastrophe. I returned to the shafts with a new focus, their closure. In every location I examined, Egypt, Peru, China, Turkey, the shafts had been deliberately sealed. This was not natural infill from erosion or sediment accumulation. These were intentional acts. At the Osirion, massive limestone blocks had been lowered into the shaft opening, effectively plugging it. At Chavin de Huantar, the shafts were filled with rubble mixed with clay, a composite designed to resist water penetration and create permanent blockage. In China's Longyu caves, stone caps were carved to fit the shaft openings precisely, then sealed with mortar. I arranged for radiocarbon dating of organic material found in the sealing layers. The results were striking. Samples from Egypt, Peru, and Turkey all returned dates clustering around two periods, 10,000 to 12,000 BCE and 3,000 to 2,000 BCE. These are not arbitrary dates. The earlier period corresponds with the end of the last ice age, a time of catastrophic climate change, rapid sea level rise, and massive geological upheaval. The later period coincides with the Bronze Age collapse, a time when multiple civilizations across the Mediterranean and Near East collapsed simultaneously, often accompanied by accounts of earthquakes, floods, and societal chaos. I began reading flood myths and apocalypse narratives with new attention. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes the gods deciding to close the fountains of the deep after the deluge. The biblical account in Genesis mentions the fountains of the great deep bursting forth before the flood and being stopped afterward. Hindu texts describe the sealing of serpent gates after a great war that shook the earth. Egyptian texts referred to the closing of the ways to the Duat after a time of fire and water. These are not isolated stories. They describe a global response to global catastrophe. The evidence suggests two possibilities. The first is that the cataclysmic events themselves, earthquakes, floods, crustal displacement, damaged the shaft systems. If the shafts were accessing geothermal and tectonic energy, a massive seismic event could have caused uncontrolled energy release, electrical surges, or structural failures that made the systems dangerous. Survivors may have sealed them to prevent further damage or casualties. Ancient texts support this. They describe fire from below, burning waters, and thunder in the deep during periods of upheaval. The second possibility is more deliberate. Perhaps the sealing was not reactive, but preventive. If a catastrophe destroyed the civilization that built and maintained these systems, the survivors may have realized that later generations would lack the knowledge to operate them safely. Rather than risk future misuse or accidental activation, they chose to seal the wells permanently. Some texts suggest this explicitly. The Sumerian king list mentions a decision by post-flood rulers to hide the ancient works and cover the gates that led below. Egyptian records from the New Kingdom refer to earlier dynasties that closed what should not be opened again. I examined the ceiling materials more closely. In several locations, I found evidence of ritual activity associated with the closure: offerings, inscriptions, protective symbols. This was not merely construction work, it was a ceremonial act, performed with gravity and intention. The ancient engineers who sealed these shafts understood what they were closing, and they wanted to ensure it stayed closed. The echo, modern rediscovery, and electromagnetic silence. The shafts are still there. I know this because modern technology can detect them. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted near ancient sites in Egypt, Peru, China, and Turkey have identified thousands of subsurface anomalies, voids, shafts, and chambers that do not appear in any archaeological record. Magnetometer readings show electromagnetic irregularities at depths consistent with the ancient shafts I examined. Seismic tomography reveals vertical structures extending deep into bedrock beneath temples, pyramids, and city ruins. The evidence is clear. Far more of these structures exist that have been excavated or acknowledged. But accessing them is another matter. I submitted research proposals to examine newly detected shafts in Egypt. My applications were forwarded through multiple bureaucratic channels, then denied without explanation. I applied for permits to conduct electromagnetic surveys at Chavin de Huantar in Peru. The Ministry of Culture rejected the request, citing concerns over site preservation, despite the non-invasive nature of the technology. I contacted colleagues in China who had detected similar structures near the Longyu caves. They told me their findings were classified shortly after publication and further research was prohibited. The pattern of denial is consistent. When researchers detect subsurface anomalies near ancient power sites, access is restricted. When electromagnetic readings are published showing unusual energy signatures, funding is withdrawn. When archaeological teams propose excavating newly discovered shafts, permits are delayed indefinitely or refused outright. The official explanations cite safety concerns, preservation priorities, or lack of historical significance. But I have worked in archaeology long enough to recognize a coordinated suppression when I see one. I spoke with a geophysicist who had worked on a government-funded survey project in Turkey. He described detecting a network of shafts beneath an ancient Hittite site, shafts that extended over 300 feet into granite bedrock and exhibited residual electromagnetic fields strong enough to interfere with survey equipment. His team prepared a report recommending further investigation. The report was classified. The survey data was confiscated. He was instructed not to discuss the findings publicly. When I asked why, he said the official reason was national security, but he suspected something else: economic implications. If these shafts are merely ancient relics, there is no reason to restrict access or classify research. But if they represent a functional technology, if the systems could be studied, understood, and potentially reactivated, then the implications are not archaeological, they are economic and political. A decentralized energy infrastructure based on geothermal and telluric principles would not require fuel, transmission lines, or centralized control. It would not generate profits for energy corporations. It would not justify government regulation or taxation. It would undermine the entire structure of modern energy economies. I returned to the question that began this investigation: what lies dormant beneath our feet? The ancient wells were sealed after catastrophe, hidden by time and forgotten by history, but they were not destroyed. Modern detection reveals their presence. Modern instruments record their residual energy. The knowledge of how they functioned has been lost, but the structures remain. And if that knowledge could be recovered, if those systems could be understood, the world would change. Not because of what happened in the past, because of what might happen next. The wells were sealed once by stone. Now they are sealed again, by silence, by bureaucracy, by the deliberate suppression of inquiry. And until that silence is broken, the question remains unanswered. What could we learn if we dared to look.